Okay, welcome.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. Now we can start. Welcome, everyone. We do need to get started. We have a full agenda this morning. I would love to have you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And then, yes. Okay. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Bend City Council would like to thank the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs for offering this land acknowledgement for us to read during our meetings. We encourage everyone watching to learn about the indigenous people whose homelands we occupy. We would like to acknowledge that the beautiful land known as Bend, Oregon, close to the Columbia River, is the original homelands of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. The Confederated tribes ceded this land in the Treaty of 1855 while retaining regular and customary hunting, fishing, and gathering rights. The Wanalama, Warm Springs, Wasco, and Northern Paiute people inhabited this area in certain seasonal times that clearly established their presence. It's also important to note that the Klamath Trail ran north through this region to the Great Celilo Falls trading grounds. This trade route expanded the impact of commerce between tribal nations. We acknowledge and thank the original stewards of this land. It is our hope that guests continue to honor and to care for it.
Thank you very much. And I do want to acknowledge that we have several of our cities in Deschutes County with us today. First, I want to recognize Corey Misley and Council President Nancy Conley. I see you on the screen. Welcome today. Thank you so much for joining us, Corey and Nancy. And I see that we have Lapine, we have Jeff Wuschlager. Jeff, is there anyone from your council that has joined us?
Nobody was able to make it today, Commissioner. I apologize for that.
No, well, thank you for joining us.
Sure.
We appreciate that. And then I believe Redmond should have Keith Kukowski. Keith, are you there?
No.
Does anyone see Keith?
I know he's planning on.
He confirmed, so I'm sure he must be joining us at a moment in time. And I don't believe I see any Redmond City Council people. Well, maybe they thought it was starting at 10:30. Okay, when they join us, if someone sees, please let us know. Do we need to take a roll call for this?
Counselors, why don't we do a quick introduction? Counselor Keebler, I'll start with you to introduce yourself, please.
Sure, yeah. Counselor Melanie Keebler, pronouns she, her.
Commissioner DeBone, good morning, everybody.
City Councilor Rita Chamberlain,
Mayor Pro Tem Jenna Goodman Campbell, she, her.
Okay, Patty Dare Chair, Deschutes County.
Mayor Sally Russell, she, her.
Anthony Brogan, he, him.
Megan Perkins, she, her.
Commissioner Phil Chang, he, him.
Barb Campbell, Bend City Council, she, her.
So, if any of the cities would like to engage at this moment, we do have some time. If you have any kind of a request. Corey, did you want to say anything?
No, we're glad to be here and look forward to the meeting.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Jeff, also for joining from Lapine. And we'll find out where Redmond is. Maybe someone can send a text. Okay, first item on our agenda is review of House Bill 4123.
So we'll turn this over to Nick Lilla.
And Nick and I are going to tag team on this, so I will cover the first part. And just to summarize the legislation that passed, known as House Bill 4123, which establishes locally led regional houselessness response coordination through 8 pilot projects across the state. So thank you all for your advocacy in making this happen. I think it was pretty close to unanimous support in both the House and the Senate. So just as a reminder, each pilot will receive $1 million in state funding over 2 years to operationalize coordinated offices to strengthen their community's homeless response. And again, thanks for the collaborative work to secure the funding. So Deschutes County will be receiving that $1 million. That was the language in the bill. It'll go directly to Deschutes County. These pilots are not intended to be duplicative of the existing work in the community, nor are they intended to take on the role of direct service delivery. Instead, the pilots will, one, provide high-level coordination, centralized communication, and strategic visioning. Also identify opportunities to more effectively leverage existing funds and access new resources, and create a more equitable and accessible and responsive system for those experiencing homelessness. So there's a minimum standard, and I just want to keep us focused. That's what's on the screen there in the blue circle to help guide our discussion today. Some very prescriptive next steps. One of which is to sign an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement, with our regional partners. And now we have the benefit of adding Sisters, Lapine, Redmond, Bend, and Deschutes County to that list. So we will all be engaged in an IGA effort to establish this collaborative office. In addition to that, establishing an oversight board that consists of members from each participating local government. We're going to talk more about this here in a bit. This must be an elected official. We talk about the oversight board. Third, developing a 5-year strategic plan to identify gaps in our community's houseless services in coordination with community partners and existing efforts. And as you all know, we have a head start. We've been engaged with the Emergency Homelessness Task Force and have a draft plan. I think there's more work to refine that plan, but we are off to a really good start, and that's really the intent, is to help us put the resources on the ground where they're needed most right now. The fourth point is to commit to continued sustained funding beyond the first 2 years of the state funding. And then there's a reporting feature. So a report is required of the Oregon legislature and the Oregon Housing and Community Services on local progress, opportunities, and challenges to inform future state homelessness funding and policy decisions. So that's the basic framework that gives us the springboard to kind of launch into today's discussion on some of the next steps that we would like to see to keep this moving. So I'm going to turn it over to Nick.
Thank you, commissioners and councilors, mayor, chair. I'm happy to jump into this. Before I do, any questions about House Bill 4123 that we can answer at this point, or I'm happy to jump right into next steps as well. And not seeing any, I'll jump into next steps. And Eric Kropp will join us here in a few minutes at the table up here, although I thought about moving over there, so which one's not like the others? That's me over here on this table, but we'll have Eric Kropp and join us here in just a few minutes. So next steps, and I will say before I jump into the next steps, we have already taken the first step, which is to create a county fund to accept the $1 million from the state, and then we'll be able to expend money from that, for staff, for all the needs that we have for that office. So really the key, and we're going to see the calendar here in just a moment, but some of the key next steps are going to be to hire an executive director. This is going to be the person that's going to help lead all of the coordination efforts. Certainly with myself, the city manager, Eric King, and other staff that we have, and other teams, the partner organizations, et cetera, reporting to the board as well. But hiring an executive director is going to be a critical first step. Identifying the board of directors, as Eric mentioned, elected officials from each of our organizations, and creating the IGA. And Eric is going to talk about the nuts and bolts of that IGA. And the goal is to do what we can to accomplish each of these three major tasks prior to the end of this fiscal year, by June 30th. Certainly the IGA is going to be the most important, identifying the board of directors. Hiring an executive director may be a bit aggressive and a bit ambitious, but I think we still want to do what we can to get to that point. So those are some of the key initial steps. The next big one, and we look forward to some discussion about this here in just a few moments, is to develop the strategic plan. And as we are aware, the city and county created and convened the Emergency Homelessness Task Force, which is a collaborative team of local agencies and service providers. Worked a lot closely, primarily in 2021, worked with all of us, varying degrees of participation in that from all of us. And they developed a strategic plan really for our Deschutes County region to begin to address this issue. And that plan will then offer the collaborative office, the coordinated office, a starting point for creating the strategic plan going forward. House Bill 4123, as Eric mentioned, requires us to create a strategic plan, and that's the vision for where we're going together, how we're going to collaborate and coordinate together. And this plan is a great starting point, but we fully expect for that plan to evolve as we create the joint office and we have the board of directors. And we expect there to be a lot of ideas shared about how the plan is amended, expanded, changed, et cetera, as we go forward and work together. I can share about any more information about the next steps, but I really want to take a moment to invite any comments or questions about the strategic plan. A lot of information continues to be shared about what the components of that plan may be, about ideas for that going forward. So let me just pause there for a moment and see if anybody has any comments about the direction of the strategic plan.
Any questions at this point? I don't think so.
Okay.
Nick, I did notice I was supposed to say something before I started with you, and this is to acknowledge all the county and cities and elected officials, staff, and partners for your help in securing the $1 million worth of funding from House Bill 4123. So it was a huge, huge effort. Thank you for Jason and it was truly bipartisan looking at the legislation. It was bipartisan all over the state. And so thank you. It's great to know, and we're only looking at April 8th, and here we are together, and we're going forward. So this is good news.
Thank you, Chair Adair. So with that, next slide, please. That we have the calendar, the collaborative office, the next steps. Thank you. So this really shows what we're going to begin to work on, what we are from today forward. And this is it. This is in our meeting packet, and it really highlights the key elements here that I just mentioned. Receiving the $1 million, it still says TBD, to be determined, and we hope to begin to receive that money here this spring, approximately 90 days from the signing of the bill, which occurred, if I understand correctly, in March. And then hiring the collaborative office. So in any event, this really shows the schedule for which the key first steps will take place. With that, I'm happy to turn it over to Eric Kropp to talk about the key components of the IGA, and maybe there will be some discussion about these key components and the time frame for the IGA.
Yes.
So the advertising for the position, ballpark, are we thinking that's going to go out soon?
Good question. We need to create the position and have. We want to collaborate with the city and our partners on the position. We haven't created that position description yet. So I would expect that can take at least several weeks. I'm not sure that we'll initiate the recruitment before May at this point.
I mean, I think our goal is to begin the recruitment simultaneously as we're passing around the intergovernmental agreement with the intent of getting somebody hired in that first quarter or the third quarter of this calendar year, so sometime late summer, early fall. Just a reminder, I did get a text from Brenna Visser with the bulletin. She was having a hard time hearing folks with mics. Okay, I don't know if that was all of us or just to speak into the mic she asked. So.
On a wireless mic, you might want to adjust up so that you're speaking, the mic is a little bit closer, and that may help. And also
Okay.
some adjustments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, just a quick question. Will the office physically be housed here at the county?
Good question. We've just started to talk about that very question.
Yeah, we actually would love to see if there's some opportunity, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the updates on the projects later on. But the city is just closed, I believe it was yesterday, on the Rainbow Hotel. So we're going to explore that facility as potentially being a home for the collaborative office. So that way we're right there in the, where services being provided, et cetera. So.
According to my agenda, at this moment in time, we could possibly have more input from Chair Derek, Commissioner DeBonne, over this compassion with results. Commissioner DeBonne, do you want to say a few words on this?
So yeah, I've seen that a little bit. I guess it's just kind of the philosophy and the culture of what we're aiming for is maybe the conversation starter here. Having folks in our cities and then around the cities is the interesting situation. You know, our public lands have always been just this wonderful place that's outdoors to recreate, but now we have more folks, setting up long-term out there. So the philosophy of asking people not to settle in long-term, driving people towards services, and I've had some of these discussions, and this is good for all of us to, kind of compare notes and talk about a little bit. If somebody's not asking for help, not raising their hand saying, I need some help, or I'd like my conditions to change, what's the philosophy? What's the culture of what we think we're going to do here? So that's kind of a conversation starter for all of us. I know we've got lots of different, views on this. It could go anywhere. But probably at our board meeting today is the opportunity to hopefully put some words around that. I know from the other cities we have staff, so not the elected officials as much, but we're all elected officials at this table. So, that's kind of a starting point.
I think it's a good starting point. This plan actually came from Redmond, from Mayor Endicott had sent it to me, and so I've been trying to hand it out to as many people as possible. Sorry, I missed you last night. I hand it to you, Anthony. To get it out.
Hey, Commissioner Adair, it's very challenging to hear you. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There you go.
Okay, this is my third time with a problem with the mic.
Yeah.
I was too close last night, and I was too far away the other day. So, third time's a charm. Thank you so much. So we will hand these out, and if the staff can just research and vet what their approach is. The plan is actually by Christopher Rufo. Christopher Rufo does a lot of different projects. I see his name on a lot of good things out there. So anyway, would appreciate if we could have some more staff research on it. I just think it's timely, and as talking with Eric this morning, we still have a ways to go with actually making a difference here in Deschutes County. And we're always looking for a spot where we can help people and consolidate our services. So thank you. Eric, did you want to mention anything about unsanctioned camp code?
Yeah, so I think there's some elements of that concept that you mentioned that include regulations around camping on public property, or in the case of cities, in a rights of way. So the city is engaged in an effort of scoping that project. As you know, we're in the process of amending our development code to provide more certainty, predictability in the siting of temporary housing and other emergency shelters. We'll be having a public hearing and some decisions in May. So on the heels of that, beginning this summer, we'll be talking and scoping the project of camping in the public rights of way and public property with our council, and we want to work with the county in doing that as well. There's been a lot of work. A lot of cities have been down this path. In fact, the League of Oregon Cities has developed or in the process of developing a model camping code that complies with state law. So we'll be looking at that as well as other best practices of other cities. So it is on our radar, elements of what you're talking about.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that.
And Chair, may I?
Yes.
Just on that? I think obviously the order of these things is important, but, calling results compassionate without a safe place for people to go seems like what we've been doing in this community for the last, let's say, decade, and it's gotten us to where we are right now, which I'm glad we're all at the table and taking this issue seriously. I hope that the elements of the document that you're referring to, we can work that into the strategic plan, which I understand to be sort of, once we've got this office up and running, that's when the strategic plan will come into place. But I don't want anybody to have any illusions about, camping regulation sort of band-aids when we don't have enough safe places for people to go. So I think it needs to be a holistic conversation. particularly with regard to the strategic plan, which I see as the linchpin of this whole effort.
Go ahead.
To build off of that a little bit, I agree, Councilor Broadman, and I think specifically we need to be looking at as wide a variety of places for people to go as possible, to include safe places for people to camp that are sanctioned. Without that, we're just going to keep moving people further out onto public lands, onto the fringes, where there's really no support for people to meet their basic needs. And the results of that, I think we're very familiar with the negative impacts that has both for public lands and for the broader community. So I'd really like to see, discussion in the future of specifically of more developed places for people to camp, if that's how they would like to live.
Can I jump off of on a few now? Yeah, I don't know how many people saw the email that was forwarded today from the Forest Service, but that kind of brings to mind really wanting to involve the Forest Service in this whole process. Particularly, I'm looking under sort of the advisory body and also key partners, because they, at last count, I think it was 200 people at China Hat right now. We need to start, really involving them and coordinating with them throughout this whole process.
I do have a meeting this afternoon with the Forest Service. Great. I was sending emails because I was getting an email an hour from China Hat on Wednesday. Fires. We had so many fires, and people out there are so concerned. So contacting Glenn Casamasa, who is the regional forester, his right-hand person is down in the county today, and Holly called me, and so we're going to get together today at 4 with a couple people that actually live in China Hat. They had done pictures last August, brought them into our meeting of all the things that have been happening. 200 is the count for the letter, and so hopefully we can get together. And you're right, we need to bring them in to be part of the solution. Truly, it's been trying to do that for a couple of years, and I'm really happy that it seems like it's where things are happening for the better. So thank you for that.
Chair Adair, I guess it sounds like we're still having mic problems. I just wanted to know that people are not able to hear.
You're doing great.
I know, it's here, I think, online and others.
Oh, so maybe it's.
We're going to try and get some support and
In the room. She's strong in the room.
And can I also,
Is mine okay?
I'll let Sally lead.
I bet it has to do with the speaker that's right behind us.
Oh.
And so, yeah, but we can try that. Thank you.
just on this note, I wonder if I may, I wanted to just point out a great partnership that Ben Fire and the Sheriff's Office are undertaking up at Juniper Ridge. So we are doing chainsaw training with staff to create fire breaks along the perimeter roads, limbing all the junipers that are 4 to 6 feet from the ground, removing brush. Ben Fire is going to oversee and identify areas of concern. They're going to work over about 30 acres. Deschutes County will utilize their inmate crews to haul and ship debris. So all this work is taking place the second week of May. So we've got some good models of reducing some fire risk on the north end. I'm sure the Forest Service would be interested in trying to repeat some of that effort on the south end of town as well to reduce fire risk.
Eric, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking like we really need to have like a water truck on call for that area, because I've driven out to all those homes, and that sounds like an excellent plan to, top the junipers and everything. But truly, we need water available closer rather than further away. I don't know if that's something that, you can contract with a tender truck in the area that can like get there in just a few minutes. I know when I went out with Deputy Zook, it was in September, a really hot day, and somebody had a fire going, and he carries 10 gallons of water with him in his truck. But clearly, we're going to need more than 10 gallons.
We can look into that.
Thank you.
So one other topic, just kind of the big concept. So out of whoever's out, kind of in transition, struggling for housing or whatever, let's take this whole problem and offer whoever is available jobs in the economy. You know, as I say, we've got jobs available, and it's a function of the wage and the cost of housing, but this would be a call for business owners and the community to be able to say, okay, well, let's take this thing and knock it down by 20% by just welcoming whoever we can into the economy. So it's not going to be for everybody, but then you take a 100% problem and you make it 80%. So we've already knocked it down a little bit. So as I say, around this table, we're not running small businesses right now, but in our community, let's work on that. Let's advocate for welcoming whoever we can into the economy. We've got businesses that are looking for 1, 2, 5, 50, and 100 people. There's a company in Redmond that said, I'm looking for 100 people right now. And I offer jobs to people, and they're like, nah, I'm okay. But I mean, how can we get past that where, you know, and as I say, if it's the cost of housing, if it's the cost of transportation, those are issues right now. But that seems pretty tangible to be able to hopefully get some folks engaged in the economy.
And the Bethlehem in Redmond is really coming along too. So that's going to be homes for up to 88 people. I know the kitchen's still under construction, but I believe it next month, isn't that what?
Oh yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so it's truly exciting for that community if they can actually get a job and, yeah. So thank you for those remarks.
Offering employment opportunities is something we certainly should be doing, as well as offering a whole suite of supports and resources for people to help people get back on their feet. But I just want to remind everyone that a large percentage of the people who are homeless in our community do have jobs that they go to every day. And so if I had a job and was not able to afford a place to live and had someone come to me and assume that I did not have a job and needed to be offered one, I would actually be pretty insulted.
Well, and Commissioner DeBon, I'm very excited about the Navigation Center opening soon, because one of the key elements of the Navigation Center is not only a place to store your items, but the potential for job training. So we're really excited about Shepherd's House opening that up, we think at the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be really good for our community.
Yeah, I see Corey, City of Sisters.
Appreciate that. I was just going to request if we could focus the conversation a little bit on the joint office and the House bill and the strategic plan and IGA and all the work we have to do. We're a little late to the table. I wouldn't say late to the table, but we weren't involved in the fall and, the draft strategic plan. So we'd love to hear all your thoughts, kind of digging into those details if we could.
Here.
Okay, Nick and Eric?
Yep, that's a great segue for Eric Krupp to outline the terms of the IGA and to get your feedback.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Eric Krupp, Deputy County Administrator. I'm also serving as our Interim Health Services Director. As Nick and Eric King mentioned, one of the key elements of the House bill is that participating agencies need to sign an IGA. Our goal is that the county and participating cities will sign that draft or sign the IGA by the end of this fiscal year, so June 30th. The IGA is important not only because it's required by the House bill, but it really sets the structure for success of the joint office. The intent is to clearly lay out different roles and responsibilities. When coming up with the draft IGA, we as staff looked to 911, and we looked at that IGA because the 911 IGA, and it's changed over time and has improved, clearly lays out the role of staff versus the elected bodies versus the fire chiefs and police chiefs. So that's kind of the key element of the IGA. In your packet is the one-pager. We also have it printed out over there, but this is just a big picture summary of the IGA, and I'll walk the group through it. But today we would like to get input from the city councilors, the mayor, and our commissioners about the direction or what you see so far. It is definitely draft. We as staff needed to put something on paper so people can react to it. So I'll walk through kind of each category, and then I'll pause and see if there's input from the elected officials. The first main area is the Board of Directors, and that's really the governance structure, and that is required by the House bill. The role of the Board of Directors would be to establish the IGA. We see each city nominating one city councilor or mayor to be on the Board of Directors, and then the Board of County Commissioners would also have one seat, so one commissioner would sit on the Board of Directors. To be on the Board of Directors, it has to be an elected official. There's one member, one vote, and the Board of Directors would meet regularly. The role of the Board of Directors is to provide the policy direction, so very similar to the City Council versus the City Manager and the Board of County Commissioners versus the County Administrator, is the elected officials would set the policy direction, and then the staff would carry that out. The Board of Directors would also kind of oversee the strategic plan and serve as the liaison back to their governing bodies. Any questions, comments, input on the Board of Directors, the governance structure?
I do. When you say meet regularly, are you talking about monthly? Do we know what that meeting would regular?
It would really be up to the Board of Directors. Probably need to be at least once a month. Could be more. It really depends on the Board of Directors.
Eric,
Sounds like 5, one commissioner and one counselor from each city? I mean, just getting the 10.
Yeah, let's see. We have, now I'm looking at the other sheet.
Eric, as you look that up, I know that there are ongoing mic issues. We're going to ask to pause in just a few moments so that we can hear. And so just for the audience, the question from Chair Adair was how frequently might the committee or the Board of Directors meet?
Okay.
So is it all the wireless mics just aren't in the system? Is that what's maybe happening?
Yeah, the issue is with the wireless mics, not these. I guess it would be roughly a five-member Board of Directors.
Oh, with the cords, we can share.
So we've got council from the City of Bend and the County Commission at the table here today, and then we're talking about expectation of City of La Pine, City of Sisters, and City of Redmond having a counselor. So, I mean, it's our discussion, but they don't even maybe know this yet, the counselors themselves.
This was discussed with at least the City of Sisters during our most recent joint meeting with them. So I think they have at least that much heads up.
That is true, we do. And we understand the commitment of council member time. It is an election year, and we have 3 positions rotating off is the only concern of bringing new members up to speed every 2 years as we progress.
Great. Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah.
Is there a requirement that our 4 cities all participate from the bill? Can one of them opt out? So, in response to Tony's question, if, Redmond, they just decide they're just, is that all right?
All 4 cities supported the House bill, so we would expect and hope for participation.
I think so, too.
If one didn't, we would continue to move forward. We would still invite them to the table.
Great. That's been my impression, is that they're here because they wanted to be here. No offense, welcome, we're so happy to have you, but, I thought it came from them, let's be involved, not us trying to drag them into being involved. So, yeah, I think we can assume that they will. Yeah, exactly. I think we can assume that they can scare up an elected official, and it sounds like, if not, that does not break this thing, if
Correct.
La Pine decides that they just can't carry this.
The other thing is what's being proposed is the condition of membership is there's a couple of different tiers. So a tier 1 is kind of an all-in support and financial support from the county or the city. And then if an agency doesn't want to provide that financial commitment, we still want them at the table. So that's how it's proposed to be.
Of course, thank you. No, thank you.
And one of the other things that we need to keep in mind, particularly as we talk about this strategic plan, is how much work was done before that. Some of the other cities in the county joined.
Right.
Having been through the very in-depth process to develop the strategic plan with the Emergency Homeless Task Force, I feel like I understand it, I own it, I support it, but to be coming in at this point, we want to we want to set a welcoming table where everyone feels like that that their input is important, right at the foundations of this thing.
Great.
So I'd like to say, so that's a draft proposed plan. I don't know that we've gotten to a point where it's, the plan. It's
Nope.
an idea, it's a starting point. We're in that spot where we're talking about the structure right now. When we get down to a plan, there's probably a real vibrant discussion to be had about, adopting a plan. I'm just acknowledging that.
Yeah, no, I think that we should view that document at the moment as a good guide for the joint efforts between the city of Bend and Deschutes County, and we can look at it as a starting point for a broader coordinated office if all the jurisdictions who are participating support that. And that's why I was saying we want to make sure that we set a welcoming table where everyone feels like their input is meaningful, right at the foundations of this thing.
Absolutely.
I think House Bill 4123 and all the different counties which were funded through this pilot program recognizes the strength of having all the cities within each county participating and contributing at the table, because it's not just a 1 or 2 city issue, it's a countywide, right? It's a countywide opportunity. And so, I think my guess is, listening to all of you, that we all agree that it makes sense to set the table to have all the cities in our county participate. And so Sisters, Lapine, Redmond, Bend, and Deschutes County. Have I missed anyone? I think that's it. That's good. Yeah, and so if you look at this sort of first segment page, under Board of Directors, there's a suggested governance structure. Does anyone have any additional comments on this? Do you think it's okay to move on to the advisory committee piece? Are you good with that?
May I just add one thing? So I appreciate that we probably have to meet once a month at the outset of this, or the governments. My hope is that this office is, is efficient and provides the work to this community that we know we need urgently and acutely. And if monthly meetings are getting in the way of that, and at some point when we have it up and running, it could go to quarterly, knowing that it is really, the board is really giving policy direction rather than day-to-day management of this office. My expectation is the executive director of the office is going to be somebody who is very highly skilled at this area, has a lot of experience in the as a community and trust with the office, and check-ins via potentially quarterly meetings or other updates should be appropriate. That would be my hope. I know we need more meetings is what I'm saying.
No, I think what you're saying makes sense. So thank you for those comments. So Eric, do you want to continue on?
Sure, thank you.
And Eric, if we could just pause for just a moment, our IT director, Joe Sadoni's here to help us resolve the
Spotlight.
Yeah, so if we could put the cameras on Joe for a moment.
Okay.
Okay. Stretch.
Okay, Joe.
Wiggle the wire.
Okay, I just need to make. Well, and that they may be interesting opportunities. Instead of a meeting like that, you and me and a council president or whatever.
Across the street. So what do you want, this one, all the way down?
You can put that one away.
So even these would still?
No, I'm just trying to string.
How many mics do we have?
There's more in the closet. One more open for.
Oh, goodness, so what is
It isn't the key is we need these to go all the way down there.
Oh, goodness gracious.
But I mean,
Oh,
we're
okay,
setting
so
structure.
he's still around.
Walk us through it, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I didn't print out some of the right stuff, obviously, today. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't
So good. I need a copy of this.
Yeah.
I'll chat with you about the rad whack.
And how's that going? Have you already put out the notice?
I've been like items in the cart for jail. We're starting to get show up to pick up on bikes. Shows up to pick up on bikes.
All of these come out?
Oh, goodness. Friday, right? We never have Friday meetings.
Is that what I'm doing?
I know. What is happening? At 2 today. Megan and I are going to talk to Brian, right?
Yeah, there's more sitting on the floor in there.
Oh, I know they are.
I made the face for the bride conversation.
Is it exciting? I was at the Anthony.
So I need power. So, to see if this works.
I will tell you, every time it comes up, I wouldn't say no again. I promise people, only half. Dog walking area. You know what I mean? For me, that was like, I literally said the plain words. The walk. Because it wasn't kind of sad. I can't tell you what
Oh, yes.
we're wanting the library's neighbors to do.
Anna, if I could do anything to help.
But either way, we can answer.
From Joe back to the back.
Coming in. Yes. Boundary? No? Done.
No.
All right.
Okay.
You know. Yeah.
So this is just an extra mixture. Work.
Test.
We're all happy.
But then what?
Well, it was going really well. But no, I had a bike that was dead in front of a couple of people. Like, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I wish I had known. I had like this. The last bike I used.
So we now you moved it forward.
It was too sensitive. And so, I love it. Right.
I feel this way.
Oh, just like, let's brush or. Oh, so did I, yeah.
We might have it turned off. What's that? Testing, testing. Testing, testing.
You need more?
So.
So how do I get this door open?
For our traffic, I don't know, this is so excited. Yeah. It will be what it is, but well, the camera won't be able to see that. Right. Right.
Whatever.
So we have to like say it together. I mean, if we're all. Yeah, but it was great that I, so amazing. My first person was actually
Testing.
Forrester.
Testing. Testing. Testing, testing, testing.
Anyway, she went to Stanford, then she went to Colorado State.
Testing, testing.
Got a master's in forestry, and then ended up there. But here, I was like, is that yeah. Yeah. I know.
Oh, my goodness. No dancing in the middle.
Yeah, no, so I don't really worry about that.
My stepbrother.
Because so many of us.
Good. Now, nobody walk in here. This looks dangerous. No, not a
Testing, testing, testing.
Yeah.
No, I always think
Anthony?
They're so old.
no, what you get? I got one with.
I'll pull the cord out that guy.
Just another day in the office, wrangling the mics. I'm like, Brenna, you have time to come down here if you'd like, and just sit in the room. It'd probably be easier.
Yeah, just.
Yeah. So all my how about now? I started with the dark. Oh my God. Yeah.
Water truck, I don't know, sprinkler system around. Right. I know. Yeah, well,
I don't know this too, but I'll.
Literally.
well, I try to get to it, because that's why I take
Okay, we're ready to reconvene.
Yeah. So it's not good.
We know that whatever it's up, go back to work.
I thought about a current machine just for if I can make myself talk. All right, here we go.
Sister's Bakery. No, I'm not eating. Okay.
Back to work, everybody.
Wow, don't you feel great, Joe?
Thanks for the coffee break.
Okay, we're sharing, I think.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
So, where were we? So
Thank
where
you,
were we
Chair Adair. Our next general topic was the advisory committee. This really plays a critical role. We see the advisory committee being made up of houselessness experts, the local service providers. We would want representation from youth, people with lived experience, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility experts. We see the advisory committee as a key role to both the board of directors and to the joint office. The role of the advisory committee is to really bring that subject matter expertise to the joint office, and would provide input for consideration by the board of directors to make sure that the needs of the houselessness community members are met. They would provide input on the strategic plan, an action plan, and could even help draft legislation should that be requested. And earlier it was talked about the Forest Service. That might be a good area for their participation on the board, on the advisory committee.
May I say something to that effect this afternoon then?
Yeah, you could definitely, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good, when I meet with Holly and Sally. Okay.
In terms of public agencies, I understand in some parts of our county, the BLM is also an entity.
Yes. Dennis and Jeff.
Well, and, we do actually have an existing group, a public land agency coordination group that the city of Bend coordinates, and so we'll be sure to make sure we'll be sure to have broad representation from that group that's managing public lands inside and outside of the city to be part of that.
And then also, it sounds like this is kind of the transition from the Homeless Leadership Coalition, so it's kind of reconstituting it possibly. I mean, I'm just making sure.
No. The homeless
Oh, it's good I'm asking then, yeah.
The Homeless Leadership Coalition still is going to be the coordinated care, continuum of care, thank you, agency. They will nest, the idea is they'll still receive some support. They have a sponsoring agency through Neighbor Impact, and as well, I think they've been talking to Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council to provide some support there, but they will be a component of this. And still, so they still manage the point-in-time count and the coordinated entry system. That will, I think, be broadly supported by this collaborative office.
But many members of the advisory committee may come from the Homeless Leadership Coalition or their organizations.
Right. My thought on the advisory committee, I agree we need to have a partnership with the public lands owners and managers. I just want to be careful with this advisory committee. We were talking about subject matter experts on best practices on how to serve people. You know, Forest Service is in their letter to say that they're not subject matter experts. So I think of them more as like coordination, and maybe there could be, you know, subgroups or groups that are already existing that can get folded in to help make sure that we're coordinating with them under this office.
Thank you. I don't know when to ask this question, so I'll ask now. Who has authority to spend the money? I know that we can use the $1 million on actual services, that it doesn't all have to go to the office. So, you know, who makes that final decision on that pot of money?
I think that the vision, much like how council or the commission operates,
Right.
The board of directors will be that ultimate authority in approving the budget. So that'll give the direction to the staff on where to prioritize those resources, and that should be based off of that strategic plan.
Okay, and then will there be, because what we usually do then at that point is it comes to council with that recommendation that we spend the money in that way. Can the board of directors or the advisory committee or the executive director, do they have the authority straight up to decide how to spend those funds? Or does final authority have to come from our entire bodies? Do we have to get final approval from the entire Bend City Council?
That would be really challenging. So I think that's the intent of having the board of directors, is you have that
That's great.
liaison.
Yep.
so
Nope,
to
that's
be able
great.
to report back. And this will nest under the county structure, so Nick or Eric can talk about kind of similar to how 911 and other agencies work in the budget
Yeah,
process.
part of it is the budget would reside in the county's budget, and then if the board of directors said, go out and spend money, the executive director can execute that, although it would fall under the county's procurement policies. So if there was an expenditure of over $150,000, that would need to come to the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay.
Anything under $150,000, the county administrator can approve. So that's the wrinkle as part of residing in the county's budget.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the next area is,
Can I
Oh.
ask one more question?
please.
Just in kind of looking at the authority and duties from the board of the directors to the advisory committee, it both says strategic plan, and so I'm really interested in like how that breakdown is happening, because we don't have our elected board of directors yet, and we don't have an advisory committee yet, and we're creating a strategic plan, and so what will be like concrete when everyone's brought in, what won't be, where's the flexibility in that, and that breakdown.
Of the different roles related to the strategic plan?
Different roles, and like I think what I've seen in my short time in elected office is that like it, when we're creating a strategic plan, like at the city, it's like we have our firm goals, and then strategic plans are made underneath it. And so if we already have the strategic plan, are they just going to be building off of that strategic plan? How much flexibility do they have on the strategic plan we've already built? Just trying to kind of figure out like how much autonomy this advisory committee is going to have, so that they kind of know when they decide to commit their time and effort into.
Yes, I think the key is the advisory committee provides input on the strategic plan to the board of directors.
And the strategic plan does not need to come until after the IGA has been signed and the board of directors has been appointed, is that right?
I mean, it's an element of the House Bill 4123, and it's that the plan that we've all been talking about is a great springboard.
Sure, yeah.
We feel like the final touches and refinement and some flexibility, to go back to Council Schenkelberg's request. I think there definitely is flexibility, and the board of directors will dive in a little bit deeper with that. But we have a starting point, so we're not starting from zero.
And I guess my question is really, we don't have to finalize the strategic plan before the IGA. Yeah, okay, great. And thank you to everyone who has worked on the strategic plan we have so far. I know you worked really hard on it, but just trying to just figure out, is this our final document? No, it's not. Thank you.
Not for this.
Right,
exactly. Not for the coordinated office.
Right, exactly. Thank you, Phil.
All right.
All right, the next area is the role of the county administrator or county administration. The way it's drafted is the executive director will report to the county administrator, much like 911. When looking at the models, it's difficult if you have a position report to a board of directors from different cities. You would have 5 different bosses, and there might be some confusion and direction. So the position itself in the office would report to the county administrator or designee. And then kind of the day-to-day management and those things go up through the county administrator.
So from experience, as I say, with our 911 director position, it's really the value of who's doing the annual evaluation. So that's kind of what it boils down to. Is it done by committee, or is it done by their direct manager, which would be the county administrators, what we're proposing? Because if it's done by committee, then that's the situation where either it slips or it becomes a divided, opinion issue, and it's the position, the job. Are you doing your job? So that's kind of what this boils down to.
Yeah, I agree, and it's similar to how I, for example, conduct the evaluation for our auditor. I'll coordinate with the audit committee on their input, as well as other city managers, others that are involved in that process in conducting that annual evaluation. Exactly.
Then it's the board of directors, as I say, would have input to it and say, okay, well, this person so it boils down to that person's job, their position. It could be 3-2, where 2 people like, 3 don't, and they'll go the other way, and it just becomes a little bit messy at that point, and then it's an unstable environment for somebody's career. So that's the goal here.
All right, the next area is the role of the executive director. For this position, we really see it as an expert in homelessness, service, affordable housing, financing and development, also either have lived experience or understand that. And really, it's the person that gets the work done. I mean, everybody will be working towards this, but when, that's kind of the key position. The authority and duties are listed there. So it's much like a executive director of a nonprofit, although this office resides within the county. Any questions or comments?
I see mention of, I see mention of staff. Do we have any concept of what staffing will look like for the committee? And I also see mention of for the office, mention of kind of city staff and county staff working collaboratively. Do we have any vision for that yet?
Yeah, there's 2 probably main concepts. One is the joint homelessness or houselessness office. That'll likely be an executive director and then a support staff. 2 FTE, maybe 2.5, but that's what we're kind of bouncing around. And then the board of directors, we would have a staff liaison to accompany the elected official. So each city would designate a liaison to work with the elected official and also kind of provide that link back to the staff of the organizations.
So there's an interesting conversation maybe we could have here. Is the goal of the executive director to put themselves out of business? Because a nonprofit, that would be your mission. I'm here passionate about a subject, and the less that's happening, the less we need to do these work. And so this is that exact scenario. So now we're going to create a new board of directors with elected officials, an advisory committee, and a director. It's just that cross of, if the mission is to reduce this, are we ever going to be able to reduce it, or it's just going to be a 3 or 10% increment of cost of doing business for the rest of the time? So it's just an interesting concept.
I mean, Chairman.
Yes, you may.
I think, I'm only one person. My whole expectation for this is that it's like.
Mike?
Just a little closer.
That it's like, exactly that. This is an executive, and this should be part of the strategic plan. It shouldn't be just, us talking about it here. I hope that it's formalized and explicit within the strategic plan that this is an executive with a mandate and the authority to do exactly that, work themselves out of a job. Like it's like a online dating for people who want to get married, right? So.
Gee, we need
that.
We need those comments in the minute. I like that.
No, I mean, it's like your whole hope is that this goes away. And I think that which leads to my next question, which is this executive director, so you're going to fly this as a county position. Is the board going to be in place, or the advisory board when we hire? I assume not, right?
The goal is to have the board of directors in place so that they can have input.
So they'll be interviewing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, that's kind of one of the tiers of membership and trying to entice all cities to participate at the highest level is if you want tier 1, then you get input on the ground level.
And to maybe elaborate further, I think our intent is to leave today with some general agreement about this so we can get the job description finalized, get it advertised. At the same time, also be going back to our individual elected bodies, selecting the representative from each body and forming that board of directors. So that way we're being efficient and getting urgency. I think we all agree that we need to act urgently and see if we can get that board of directors up on board and get that one of their first action items would be to participate in the selection process of the executive director.
If I could just say one more thing about kind of putting this office out of business. I would very much like to see us do great work that allows us to end this office within a couple of years. That said, there's a difference between what this office does and what our homeless service providers in our community do. And their work, I certainly don't expect to end in a couple of years, because the factors that contribute to housing insecurity and homelessness are going to be with us for a really long time. So while this office's role, which in my opinion is setting our service providers up for success with coordination, gap filling, long-term funding sources, that work could, I believe that work could be done in a couple of years. But that said, I don't think the work of the homeless service providers is going to be done in a couple of years.
Thank you. It's just a philosophy, the fact that, this is an ancient problem. This is not new. This has happened, all throughout history. So it's just a different phase. We're trying to really do good things here.
I would just comment, this is a problem it's a policy choice that's been made over decades and decades, so it's going to take a long time to correct, and it's primarily a housing problem, which we all know takes a while to correct. So I agree with Commissioner Chang's comments. I think just to keep in mind the different roles of service providers versus this sort of coordination governance structure.
I'd just like to echo what Commissioner Chang and Councillor Keebler has said. I think it's a really confusing message when we're talking about something ending before it started. And so this is just one step of bringing many governmental bodies together, and that's a really big, important step, and wanting to convey to the community how much work we're putting into this and how much we're willing to do to really support the entire community. And so what I've kind of seen in the work is when we're talking about something being done before it started, it feels like as a community member, it feels like why are we doing it when we're talking about it ending before starting, and not because I think that it's negative to have a light at the end of the tunnel, but more so of feeling excited that we get to start this again, and that this partnership is brand new, and that we feel happy and ready to go with the mountains and valleys that will come with this office. Yeah.
Thanks. Eric, do you want to?
I think the mayor.
Yeah, I had sort of a couple thoughts, sort of more on the philosophical level on this. One is when you have a really heavy truck, that's rolling along the road, or a steamship in the middle of the ocean, it takes a lot of energy to change the course in the moment. And you learn a lot about what you need to change the course as you're working to do that. And I see this homeless issue and this office as sort of providing the acceleration and the change that we in this county and in this state recognize needs to happen. And there are a lot of underlying issues. I know we focus a lot on housing. But maybe one of the other things that we'll focus on, I had a side experience a few days ago, or a side conversation, and it went something like this. People who are in various households throughout our community sometimes run into a space where their friends or their family members need mental health services. The time lag between identifying the need for those services and actually getting those services or whatever treatments or medications they need is incredibly long. These are opportunities that will also help stabilize our community in so many different ways. These are some of the opportunities that will come forward, and we can identify how to address the change that affects homelessness, affects so many different parts of this conversation. So the opportunity to move forward, whether or not it takes us 2 years or 4 years, is to really re-steer this ship in a healthier direction and lasting, substantive direction that's positive for our county. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And then the last two categories on the sheet I'm going to collapse together, but it's the options for cities and conditions of membership. The concept is there's different tiers. Again, we want all cities to participate. So that would be tier 1. And then if cities are willing to bring financial resources to the table, then they would have more rights as a member. So we want to get all cities on board at the highest level of membership at the beginning, so they could have input into the structure and a lot of the work. But we would allow participation even if a city does not want to provide or bring financial resources. And the financial resources really kind of come at years 3, 4, and 5, because the House Bill 4123 provides $1 million for the first 2 years, and then one of the key provisions of the bill is that the agencies need to commit to either secure additional funding or provide the funding for the years after years 1 and 2. So we really kind of see the goal is to have all cities participate at the fullest extent, so that they have as much input as possible. But if they're not willing to make that commitment, we still want them to participate, but maybe at a different tier.
But Eric, what if we don't spend the $500,000 a year, and we have some money left over? Will we have to use that before the end of year 2?
I'm not sure. I know that the money can be used for services if it's the other requirements are met. I don't know if it can go beyond.
It's probably going to be part of our agreement with the Department of Administrative Services, who I expect will be the state agency that gives this to us. What does that grant agreement look like, to spell out exactly those details?
Another funding related question. So we have a commitment under this piece of legislation to look out beyond the 2 years in terms of funding. Does the legislation specify that we need to think about long-term funding to maintain the office, or to implement the plan, or what? When it talks about that commitment to long-term funding, what does it say we're supposed to that the long-term funding is for?
I thought it was to continue the project, right, that we're piloting, whatever that might look like.
But is that implementation of the plan, or is that, show us that you've got the funding in place to keep the office going?
Mickey, because you might have the legislation right handy, so do you want to share? If you have a response.
I actually have it, but here's that.
Funding to support the ongoing operations of the Coordinated Homeless Response System.
So whatever that looks like.
Okay.
All of
Yes.
the above, Phil.
Implementation. I'll interpret that as implementation.
Because the point of this is to implement the strategic plan, so whatever this ends up looking like, I think they want to see you continue it, commit to continuing it.
And it talks about a 5-year strategic plan.
Right, so, fund the whole plan.
But could I add something, Chair? I think that
Yes.
as we were, as a community working on this legislation, I think I can say that the legislative intent was showing a commitment to continue to fund the office and the work that the office is going to be overseeing. I don't think that there's a requirement to show that every conceivable initiative that the office starts will be 100% funded through, this. You don't have to commit to all of that through this representation that you are going to fund the office. Does that make sense? I think the legislature just wants to know that we have skin in the game and that they're not going to be on the hook for an unfunded mandate moving forward on a 100% basis.
Probably coming up with enough funding to keep the executive director is the most tangible thing, right, in year 3 or 4 or 5. And then after that, it's what else do we want to invest in?
I would also hope that between this pilot and the 7 others around the state, we see some consistent themes emerge in the strategic plans, and that actually provides the basis for us to go back to the legislature and ask for implementation funding for certain kinds of initiatives.
Did Corey have a question? His hand go up and down.
Corey?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to bring up exactly what Commissioner Chang just mentioned and inquire whether the lead staff to this point, and I know it's very early in the process, so maybe I should say moving forward, we're going to coordinate with any of the other, or at least learn from or share ideas or potential, best practices with the other pilots around the state. So that was just a thought. I don't know if that was going to occur or not.
I requested from the Association of Oregon Counties to think about coordinating some kind of shared learning process for us. And if the city or the cities can make a similar request at LOC, I think that that would be a great opportunity for them to work together.
Mm-hmm.
So on the topic of the options for the cities, I would offer that if anybody's interested in pairing up with me, we'll go talk to the different city councilor in any of the cities. So I mean, any other Bend city councilor would like to pair up, and this is exactly what Rita and I were just talking about, just real quick when the mics were off, like how can we get out to the other cities, make sure we understand what it looks like and the level of enthusiasm and kind of the culture of what we're signing up for. So if any councilor wants to join me, let's go look for some dates and meet in Lapine or Sisters or Redmond.
Sounds like you're volunteering for the board.
Well, we're working towards that, aren't we?
There will definitely also be opportunities as we do joint meetings with the other councils.
Well, this is one-on-one, outside of a public board meeting is what I'm thinking, just to really, just talk it through with whoever wants to.
Well, the good news is Redmond is on the original 4123. So though they're not here with us today, I'm sure they'll be watching the meeting later, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding was, so can someone clarify specifically? My understanding was with House Bill 4123, there was general support from each city that we listed at the very beginning. Sisters, Lapine, Redmond, Bend, and
There was a letter of commitment.
and so there's a letter of commitment. So since that exists, I mean, I guess my question is, so the next step in the conversation then would be, here's our plan, here are the different ways you can participate? I mean,
It's really the IGA is the mechanism that we're talking about here, and so what we're talking about are the terms of the IGA. We will then work with our legal teams to draft that IGA and then be circulating that IGA amongst all the participating cities to sign. That's a requirement of the House bill. That really is the mechanism to put the governance structure in place and to get us launched.
So Tony, you're offering, once that's put in place, to work with maybe one or two members from your team or from your commission or our council.
There's kind of unsaid things happening here about our philosophical and political views, and I just want to be able to talk that through a little bit. I mean, I'm not trying to pick a fight. I'm just like, we see it very differently, and I'm trying to say, let's find some common areas where we can go have a drink and talk about this. That's what I'm offering.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that.
If we're curious about the other cities' engagement in this process, we've had a chance to talk a little bit with Corey and Nancy today, our Council President Connolly today. I'm curious whether Jeff would want to share with us a little bit of his thoughts on how this idea is being digested and processed over at the city of Lapine.
Thank you for that opportunity, Commissioner. This has been shared with the council per the discussion that we've had here today. It was brought to them as a policy direction, which they did vote upon to join with the letter of commitment to the legislature. What hasn't been discovered or essentially ascertained at this point is which member of that body is going to be the participatory member going forward. But as a whole, the council does recognize the issue, albeit it takes a different form in South County, but we recognize that this is something that we need to approach collaboratively. So per Commissioner DeBone's comments just moments ago, I don't know if it needs to take place outside of a recognized formal meeting. For what it's worth, as you're aware, the three of you commissioners will be meeting with the council this coming Wednesday. I don't know if you want me to add that to the agenda to make that part of the discussion, but there's no lack of interest or support at this point from the city of Lapine.
That's great.
I think it would be great to add it to the agenda. because we will be down there Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dare.
Thanks, Jeff.
Eric, could you explain the second bullet under initial participants? I think I understand what that means. I just want to be clear on prorated startup funding of their own. Can you give me an example of what that means?
It means if a city doesn't start with an initial, doesn't commit early, then they're, and they want to have, full rights and voting rights, then they may have to bring some money to the table.
Okay. So if we couldn't reach, I think the process here is important. I agree with City Manager King. We're talking about negotiating an IGA. That's how everybody signaled their level of commitment. But now, if a city says, no, we're not going to enter into this IGA, nobody can force a city to do that.
That's right.
So we're embarking on the negotiation. Part of that is this second bullet point. We're hoping everybody's an initial participant, but if they're not, there's a mechanism to cross that bridge if we come to it.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
So to wrap up this item, is there anything else that somebody thinks is missing that we need to add in general for the IGA, just kind of the conceptual parts?
The only other city I can think of is Tumalo. What if Tumalo decides they want to come on in with us, or?
Not incorporated.
Okay, there you go. We really are the only 4 that are incorporated in Deschutes County.
That's the difference.
Great.
Sun River is more organized in some
They
ways
have
than-
elected people,
So-
don't they? Yeah, but,
But they're not incorporated. either,
Okay.
so I-
And really, the
Okay.
Board of County Commissioners, that's their role. They're represent the unincorporated areas.
great.
We got that.
So I think this
Obviously-
is the answer to the question I had a little while ago. Are any of us obligated to come into this effort according to the House bill? The answer is no. We believe we have support from all 4 cities. That's what has been indicated so far. And if after this, if a city decides, no, they don't think they want to come in, there's a little incentive to get them to come in early. And that's the part about, if you don't want to join us yet, we're going to ask you for startup money. We're going to consider that $1 million as our startup money for all of us that are getting in early. Right? Great. I think that's great. I don't think there's any concern about any of the 4 not wanting. And then, Tony, to your point, as far as just differences, I think the one thing that just hands down we're here because we all absolutely agree that what has been happening so far is not working. And we have got to do something different. And we might not agree on the details of what are the different things that we want to do, how much money we want to spend on each different thing, whether we want to focus on people who are closest to moving into apartments, or we want to focus on people who are costing the most money in ambulance rides and emergency. All of those kinds of things will start to come out when we finalize the IGA and get the board and the executive director running. Is that right?
And I'm offering just to have a conversation, offline or, just with whoever wants to make sure that we're, sometimes it's just terminology. It's amazing, because I'm in a meeting, I say, oh, no, the homeless, no, it's houseless.
Right.
And it's like, no, it's addiction, no, it's, whatever. So it's just kind of practicing is all I'm really talking about, making sure we have a language we can speak and, understanding and respect for all the discussions that are going on.
So we're moving a little bit, we're sort of into the next conditions of membership. And so I just want us to keep moving along here.
Yeah, kind of combine the options for cities and conditions of membership. Yeah.
Right.
Could I make one last comment about the options for cities and the $1 million, about the ongoing funding? What I read into that is you don't have to save this $1 million in order to pay the director and have the office going. for 3 years or 4 years, that we want you to come up with your own funding for year 3, and not by our own, but we want to come up with other sustainable funding for years 3 and 4. And, the subtext for me is, we can spend this $1 million on services. Again, I don't want this money to all be going into an office and desks and and that's what I see this saying is, go ahead and spend it all right now on whatever you think is the most immediate need, but you have to show what the sustainable funding is.
I think we need to spend it on the coordinated office
Oh, no, absolutely, Millen.
plan. I think that's.
No, of
part that is
course.
Filling a gap, a service gap with some of the funding, yes.
Right, yeah,
I think that is what the legislator intended, like a governance structure to help be
exactly.
efficient with our service providing.
No, exactly, Melanie. That is absolutely what the money is for. But, do we plan that $1 million is an executive director and an office for 2 years? I plan on telling people, oh, for heaven's sake, no. That is
We
not.
know that until we set a budget with the board.
Okay.
One of our, I mean, one of the key deliverables we have for these funds is the strategic plan. And so for me, that's where the question mark is, if we feel like the strategic plan developed by the Emergency Homeless Task Force is pretty good starting point, just needs a little bit of tweaking, then we've delivered our major deliverable, and we still have most of $1 million left to work with. And if we feel like we really need to, more like a start from scratch approach, then we could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a really robust process to do a strategic plan. I would be okay either way, as long as we end up with a strategic plan at the end that has a real community buy-in. But that's for me, that is the big question mark about whether we're using the $1 million for services or using the $1 million for the basic operation of the office, because that is the main deliverable of the office.
I completely understand that. I just want to make the point that we can spend some of this money on services if we decide we have some left, and there.
I think that's wonderful, Barb. Yes, definitely. It'd be nice to know we can spend it on some services.
Right.
Eric, are you okay with covering the IGA at this moment? Do you need any more feedback from the group?
Not unless we didn't cover something, but it's been very helpful discussion.
Okay, good.
One more question. Kind of going off what Jenna said around the executive director and how much support they'll be receiving, how much flexibility will we have on the 2 full-time employees or 2.5? Because what we've seen in the city is like we create these brand new structures and we hire the director and kind of set like what their support is going to look like, and it ends up not being enough support, or the support needs to look a bit different. And so when we're creating the position in the budget for this office, like where, like, will there be flexibility if the executive director needs more than 2 full-time employees?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
In addition, those positions will get support from the general county and city, because it's a high priority for both organizations.
Totally.
So it's if they need to do a press release, we have PIOs on staff that will support them, and so I think there is flexibility there.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was an excellent question. Good to know. Yes, you do have the cities and the county behind the whole process, so that's great to know. We do need to get to our third item, which is the update on key projects. And perhaps any of the city managers that are still on the call, I don't know, Corey, would you like to add anything at this time? Corey Misley from Sisters?
No, nothing to add this time, unless either commissioners or council members from Deschutes County and City of Bend have questions for us.
What about Nancy Conley? Would you like to add anything?
I just wanted to second what the Lapine City Manager said about council diving into it and having a chance to review the work plan and the scope. Not everything that applies to Bend applies to Sisters. And as long as everyone is aware of the, give and take, it's still a priority, but just in different aspects and needs in the smaller communities. So I think there's a good compromise for everybody going forward.
Thank you for those words. Good compromise. Jeff Wolslager from Lapine. Jeff, would you like to add anything at this moment?
I've got nothing more at this time, Commissioner, but thank you for this opportunity to participate today.
No, thank you, and we'll have that on our agenda for Wednesday then. That would be great. Carolyn Egan, we'd love to hear from you.
And while Carolyn is getting situated, just to close out the IGA, what we will do with this direction is then begin circulating drafts with the intent that individual bodies will approve the IGA at your board or council meetings with the goal of having that completed by June 30th.
June 30th? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Eric.
I had to check the clock. Good morning, councilors and commissioners. We're still morning for a couple more minutes. Carolyn Egan, City of Bend. I really want to start from a city staff standpoint. We would really like to thank the commissioners for dedicating your county-owned land off Simpson for affordable housing. So it was a bold movement, and it really shows the community your continued commitment to helping address our affordable housing crisis. So thank you so much. I know not all the neighbors were thrilled, but welcome to the world of deed-restricted affordable housing. So I have some updates on a couple projects. The first, Eric mentioned earlier this morning, was about Rainbow Motel. I know there's lots of questions about how the city intends to use the Rainbow Motel. I want to share with you all what we know at this point, and I will say that I keep saying the story of the Rainbow Motel has not quite yet been written, but we do know that we've purchased that property because we were going to have some facility needs in the medium and definitely the long term. But we also knew that both of the shelters that the city had recently purchased, the one on 2nd Street and the one off Division Street, are going to need some renovations. And so our first intention for the Rainbow Motel is that we will be able to use that temporarily we have temporary operations at Division right now. We'll be able to move them over to Rainbow. So the community can expect temporary shelter operations at the Rainbow property for the summer and probably into the early fall. That's when we will be doing the renovations at Division Street, and we will then, at the end of that time, I'm calling it October, is when we will cease those temporary operations at the Rainbow Motel property, and then we will officially ribbon cut. Governor's office comes to visit the Deschutes County and City of Bend's turnkey project at Division Street Shelter. We've had 2 requests from different parts of the county who, for their operations, need access to some hotel rooms. So we are talking with those 2 divisions of the county about how Rainbow may be available for their operations. So that's another thing that the community might see, but those are really sporadic, and you probably wouldn't even notice them even if you lived next door to the Rainbow Motel. And then finally, as we contemplate the Division or the 2nd Street renovations, we know that we are going to do some initial layout changes at the 2nd Street Shelter so that we can open the NAV Center in June. But we know that we have more significant renovations that'll happen at that property. That Rainbow Motel is an option for those operations while we have that property under renovation. But we have not started those conversations with Shepherd's House. We have not. The Shepherd's House may have their own suggestions or solutions for how to work through operations. So that's about as much as the Rainbow Motel story that's been written. And so just wanted to make sure that's the latest, hot off the press that we've got for Rainbow. 2nd Street Shelter, you've heard this a lot. That's the Navigation Center. Shepherd's House and the Facilities Department of the City of Bend have been working overtime to get this figured out. so that we can continue to serve the greatest number of community members and add services there. So you'll see some changes to the layout there. We hope to get those underway and really open the doors by mid-June. So we're calling that the phase 1 changes, the layout changes, and then we are going to figure out what those 1B changes are going to be, which will be a much more dramatic renovation at the 2nd Street location at Shepherd's House. So all of these properties have more than one name, and so I feel like I'm like slash. Division Street, so this is the one, the former Ben Value Inn. I am so happy to report that the temporary operations there have been wildly successful. So we've heard from community members over the years, Bethlehem Inn has the best model. We need a high barrier model. That's the way to move people into housing. And I think now we really have demonstrated, or we're demonstrating at Division Street, that a low barrier model gets people into housing too. So we have 28 rooms there. We have 40 guests. We have one family that has already exited into housing, and we have another family that is just waiting to exit. And we have 6 households that have been referred to Thrive for housing search services. So we can do it in a low barrier environment. And I'm getting chills actually just talking about it to you. That a low barrier environment does get families successfully into housing too. And guess what? The biggest barrier is the cost of housing.
Yeah.
It is not access to housing. It's not that people aren't rent ready. So we're really contemplating changing our model. Typically, I don't know if typical, I don't have enough expertise in this world to say typically, but I would say my understanding is a lot of times if you had $1 million budget, you might have 900,000 going to your shelter operations and 100 going to your rapid rehousing, which allows people to pay their application fees first and last month, maybe some debt they have that's the stop for them to get to housing. We're changing that model, and we are saying we're going to continue to contribute more dollars to that rapid rehousing. And I think one of the things that this collaborative office is really going to have to look at is how do we bring more housing into the affordable realm? How do we encourage more landlords to accept lower rents for a shorter amount of time? And all of those types of things, if it is really the monthly rent that is stopping people from getting into housing. We also exited a family that wasn't following the rules. And so we've had success on both sides. In that regard, and so just hats off to Neighbor Impact for standing that up so quickly and for running it well. It is going to be, they have a road to go to transition that to Rainbow and then transition back to permanent turnkey. So we're going to give them a big bear hug as they make that happen for our community. Finally, the outdoor shelters. This has been maybe the most controversial of all of the things that we've discussed in the community, and continue to see camping and safe places to camp as a needed housing, despite our discomfort with it. So we are making progress on the outdoor shelters. Central Oregon Villages is working overtime. The model that we land on may look a little different than the ones that we've discussed. So we've come in to the conversation assuming that the city or some other public entity would be the one who owns the property and maybe leases the property, sort of controls the property, and that Central Oregon Villages would come on top and run the shelter. What has changed is that Central Oregon Villages has actually entered into the real estate market, or I guess the property acquisition, and so they are actually going after their own property. And so we may have a situation where we're contracting with Central Oregon Villages to both lease the land and to run the shelter, and the city will be out of it altogether. And it's surprising the number of landowners who are really more willing to engage directly with Central Oregon Villages than to have the city in that interaction. So but that does not, I know fire risk came up when we were talking earlier, continues to be an overriding concern for a large number of our community members, both inside the city's UGB and outside. And so would love to see some continued conversation around where public land, either inside or outside the city, could be used for more safe parking, more safe camping, even if the only reason we do it is to reduce fire risk. So hoping that can be a next stage of some of the conversation, but absolutely recognize that we need to prove that we can get an outdoor shelter contract underway before others in the community be willing to engage in that next level. But really need to see how we can reduce the fire risk for our community, and that can't just happen with public land inside the city of Bend, and we're going to need to lean on Deschutes County for potentially some of that land. So that's my update. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might
Do you
have.
want to say anything about the American Rescue Plan Act? That was just noted on here.
Many of these initiatives are being funded by the American Rescue Plan.
That's probably, yes, that's probably.
We are, so we have spent, the city has been allocated 14 million, the first 7 million last May, and so we worked with our council and the subcommittee to allocate. We're going to be repeating that process. We have a meeting in late April where we'll be deciding on that next 7 million and how those dollars will be spent. And actually, there's some requests from the county as part of that we'll be considering related to the stabilization center.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, the center, I think it's costing like 3.6 million now. And yeah, that would be great if you can consider that. Thank goodness it is open 24/7. Okay, so Carolyn, any questions for Carolyn at this moment?
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
Okay, Eric Kropp, do you want to talk about shelter capacity? Is he still in the room? Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Eric. Shelter capacity?
Yes.
Oh, you just didn't wait. Thank you. So get the back door.
Thank you, Jason, for joining us. I'm sure you're going to want to say a few words, maybe after Eric Kropp is done.
I'm just here to listen.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We've had a great morning.
Thank you, Chair Adair. I checked with Gwen at the Bethlehem Inn just as their current status. They have a capacity of 70 in Bend right now, 50 for adults, and 20 in their family units. And then in Redmond, it's by the second week of April, which is next week, she expects to increase the capacity to 15. I asked her, are all those spots full? And she said that they are full. I mean, there is turnover daily, so they keep on filling those spots. She said there's turnover, but not as much or as fast as they would like. She also mentioned that they are seeing some families get housing, so that's a very good sign. Then at the Central Oregon Veterans Village, the partnership between the community, the city of Bend, and the county, I talked to JW, and there are 10 units online right now. One is vacant, and they're expected to fill that next week. There have been 2 veterans who have been cycled out in a good way. I mean, they found another spot to go. And then there are 5 additional units that will be, he said the word certified, so I'm not sure if that's meaning that it was approved for habitation, but there's 5 more that just got certified and will be online very soon, and he expects to fill those quickly.
Wonderful news. That's great that 2 of them have actually transitioned out. I know the one, bless you, Eric. I know the one, in like 2 months, I think it was a transition out. So it was just unbelievable, the good work that's being done there. So, well, and Bethlehem Inn too. We had a great tour last Friday morning of the inn in Redmond. And the capacity there is quite enormous. I just know construction is quite a challenge. So between the balance, I know, Gwen, I know they're doing a great job. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, well, she's last on my list, but Janice Garceau is never last in our hearts. So we're so pleased that she's here to join us today. She does an amazing job running our behavioral health department. Truly, she is worth her weight in gold. Just think how valuable you are, Janice.
Well, then I'm worth 10 more pounds than I was at the beginning of the pandemic.
I was going to say,
Well,
put some
think
weight
how
on.
much each ounce is worth, Janice. Each ounce is worth a lot.
Sorry, a little humor at the end of 2 hours seems to be helpful. I believe, counselors and commissioners, I'm Janice Garceau. I'm Director of Behavioral Health for Deschutes County. I'm here, I think, just to update you on the use we've made of the ARPA funds for homeless outreach or houseless outreach in the community. So as you know, historically, we've had a homeless outreach team of 1 plus a PATH coordinator. So it expanded to 2 about a year and a half ago. And we were able to expand with 3 additional positions through ARPA funding this last year. We added a case manager, 2 case managers actually, and a peer support specialist with those ARPA funds. Again, that is limited duration funding through December 30th, 2024. But those positions have been hired, they're on board, and they are working currently in the community. What that allowed us to do was identify each of those 2 additional case managers to do specific outreach and engagement and development of relationships with people that are working directly with the homeless in local communities. So we have a case manager currently assigned to North County. Her name is Solomar, and she's doing outreach specifically in that area. Katie DeVito, who you're familiar with, is mostly focused on Bend, but also doing regional work because she has a larger role with our Pathways to End Homelessness program. And David Fox has been assigned specifically to the Lapine and Sisters area, so he's spending his time 50-50 in each community. They are building relationships both with service coordinators, but they're also spending time in encampments and shelters and other places where unhoused individuals show up, working really hard to engage a very difficult service population. The people who don't put up their hands because they are struggling with serious mental illness and are really struggling even just to engage in day-to-day living activities. So they're working hard to engage those folks, involve them actually actively in treatment, so get them open and enrolled in services. We also added a peer support specialist who's doing a beautiful job with much more intensive in-reach into some of the most into some of the populations that struggle the most with being highly suspicious of our services, not feeling much hope that mental health or substance use treatment can be helpful to them. And of course, our peers are folks with lived life experience and are often able to offer encouragement, support, hope in a way that's pretty meaningful compared to the professionals. That's what we're doing. We are waiting to hear on 3 additional positions. We came before our commissioners to ask for permission to apply for Measure 110 grant funds to support a case manager and 2 recovery mentors. Those are peer positions. They would be focused specifically on doing intensive outreach and engagement around folks who are struggling with substance use disorders. So I don't know whether or not folks have been keeping abreast of the news about Measure 110 funding, but it's gotten a little bit held up in the process. We're hoping that we will hear maybe by the end of this month that there have been awards approved, and we're hoping that when we hear that, we will be one of the entities that was approved to receive funding. Because there are a considerable number of projects, not just these 3 positions, that will specifically help us address chronic substance use disorders in our community if those funds are awarded. So that's where we are.
Thank you, Janice.
Yeah.
Janice,
Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Janice, so these 3 potentially Measure 110 funded positions you've put on the chart with the Homeless Outreach Services team. Are they, would those positions specifically be part of the Homeless Outreach Services team? Or might those people be working with people who have substance use disorders who are not homeless as well?
So they are most likely going to be focused on individuals who are not housed. So one of the things that was made possible by the ARPA dollars was to convert the position that Colleen had been in to a supervisory role, which was really long overdue for lots of reasons, both her leadership and the fact that the team was growing. What we've housed under Colleen is our homeless outreach services team and our harm reduction program, which also will expand if we receive Measure 110 funds. That particular team is focused on overdose prevention and harm reduction efforts with folks who are living in the community, either housed or not, with serious addiction. So this team does both, but these 3 positions on this handout, and there is a handout if you want it, are specifically focused on the unhoused who are struggling with addiction.
Thank you.
Janice, is there any opportunity for support from Bend on the Measure 110 funding? I don't know if we got asked to send in a letter, but, the city doesn't provide behavioral health services, so we want to support you in being able to expand those, obviously, as much as possible. So I don't know if there's still opportunity for that, if it's too late, and we would have to discuss it as a group, but, that seems like something the city of Bend could support in asking for that funding to flow to this region of the state. Might be too late.
No, I don't think it's too late. I believe there is a meeting of the Measure 110 Advisory Committee with legal counsel next week, which is probably a good signal that they're struggling with how to sort of take a look at the process again and get the dollars out in a way that they can support. So I think the opportunity for elected officials is to simply impress upon the Oregon Health Authority and the state legislature that these dollars were intended to serve people with chronic addiction that we are diverting from our prison system. And we are not somehow effectively getting those dollars to the community where they need to go. There are $300 million in play that have not landed in communities yet to provide meaningful help to real people who are struggling. So whatever you can do to encourage people to understand the impact of the delay, while it may be understandable, we will appreciate, because we're watching the impact of those folks not being able to be served every day.
Okay, thank you for that valuable piece of advice. Maybe we don't actually have a meeting until next Wednesday, but maybe Whitney can pull something together.
Yeah, and typically for items which are sort of fit under the council strategy and goals, the mayor does have the authority to write letters in support of those, of issues exactly like this, right? Short-term, impactful, taking us one step closer to what we want to accomplish. So let's communicate.
Okay.
We're all right here. Does anyone from Bend oppose that? Or I think we're supportive. Yeah.
And again, the intent is not to scold. These are complicated issues, and they're getting the dollars out in a unique way, but we're at a critical point where they need to land in the community, whatever that takes. So.
Okay.
The editorial in the bulletin this morning definitely kind of hinted at how complicated it is to get these funds moving right now.
Sounds like I should read that.
Okay.
It raised a lot of questions about the rollout of a Measure 110 overall.
Yeah.
I do want to acknowledge that Sheriff Shane Nelson has been on our Zoom call today, and I just wanted to give him the opportunity if he would like to comment at all. I appreciate seeing that he has been part of our discussion, or at least listening to our discussion.
I welcome my fellow elected officials and professional staff and colleagues. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I agree with everyone. I think that law enforcement has a very important position in this conversation and at this table when it comes to these circumstances and our efforts to mitigate homeless or houseless individuals that don't want to be in that situation. When we talk about it, I think it's important, and everybody recognized this, but we didn't dive into it that deeply, that there are several components to this challenge. And at the end of the day, we all remember that individuals are absolutely accountable for their own decisions and the path moving forward. The reason that enforcement of the law is critical in this component is that we will have individuals like Carolyn and Janice mentioned that don't take us up on these services that we're offering. Now, of course, our primary goal is to drive these individuals to these services because this community is very blessed. We have a lot of nonprofits and government agencies that offer a tremendous amount of services. And we're also very fortunate that we have very talented teammates in all of these county and city governments that have a broad depth of knowledge in this arena and can offer assistance to individuals. But I don't think when we look at the aspect of it that we can lose sight of the enforcement piece of it. We will have individuals that choose not to take advantage of these services. And since my colleagues and partners have covered the great examples of how this can help, and I believe in all these services, we do have to be aware of that contingent plan where sometimes enforcement of the law can also drive individuals to take advantage of these services. In law enforcement's contacts with individuals who choose to live in camp, or by their very situation may not choose that, but those are the individuals that will look for resources. We want to recognize that this is not a humane living condition for anyone. It's not humane for the individuals who are living or camping in this manner, and it's not humane for other people in the community. So when we approach this, and I'm thinking about a few areas in the county, there's areas that are affected all through the county. I know that there was an eviction process on 2nd Street, and I'd heard some of the information where some of those individuals had come from a different community because they had been evicted out of a similar situation in a different community. So they came over here. But I do want to recognize the fact that these living situations are not okay. They present a danger to the individuals who are in that situation. They also present a danger to the individuals who live in those surrounding areas. When we talk about affordable housing, I absolutely agree with you. Affordable housing is something that needs to be on our radar. It's a component of this challenge. And affordable housing can also be complicated when you look at individuals who have mental wellness challenges, addiction challenges, or those individuals that choose criminal activity and would just not want to get themselves out of the situation. Having said that, we still continue to offer resources as we enforce the law, because someday those individuals, like Janice mentioned, they will be comfortable in those relationships and hopefully they will reach out. But I'm excited to see what the Navigation Center does at Shepherd's House, because life skills, instruction, and support is a huge component of trying to assist these individuals into a better life. Our office has personally talked to people that have come here from Wyoming. I've read a news article from Television News that mentioned a couple had come here from North Carolina, and sometimes it is the promise of a job or occupation that fell through, but it is also a lot of mental wellness and addiction issues. And sadly, the intent of Measure 110, I fully support the spirit of Measure 110, but sadly, sometimes these ballot measures that get voted into place, they present even more challenges. And so I am a little bit nervous about the effects of Measure 110, just like I was nervous about the effects of legalizing marijuana. But I just want us to be cognitive about this approach and just let everyone know that enforcement is a piece of this solution and is a piece of this puzzle. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Nelson. Thank you for your comments. Jason, I can't believe that you really wouldn't want to say a few words to the group. Yes, please do. And thank you for joining us. Thank you, Janice.
Thank you, everybody, for having me here today. And I just want to say thanks for both the county and city's commitment to tackling this issue. And I also want to say a thanks to the people who are already doing the work out in the community. I think we have an incredible range of service providers. Eric talked a little bit about it. You know, Clovo working with the county on the Veterans Village, Bethlehem Inn, Shepherd's House. I mean, I could name an incredible list of folks who are, I think, just doing incredible work here. And so I'm really optimistic about what this partnership between the cities and the county here, what can accomplish on this issue. And I appreciate everybody digging in on it.
Oh, thank you very
We
much.
appreciate you, sir. You are the one who is appreciated. We appreciate you. We would not be here to this although it's early for me, everybody knows that. We would not be here today if it weren't for you, Jason. And we just appreciate your work and your service and your attention to this. We all know that this is not the first time you have worked and successfully for us. You were also instrumental in our being able to buy the Second Street shelter. I just have to say that over and over, how much we appreciate your service.
Counselor, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I will say this, like all legislative efforts are team efforts.
Of course.
Tons of local supports, tons of people on a local level working, advocating on a state level. And so, thank you. There's also a ton of things to go around on these efforts, so thanks.
Well, thank you for working so hard to bring us here today. Commissioner DeBone,
Kind of a closing comment.
sort of parting comments
Thank you very
here.
much.
We're running a little bit over time, so let's try to keep everybody to 60 seconds.
Oh, yeah, no, 2 quick items. Don't even have to work them out right now. So, what's the name? So I'm thinking, we just had a meeting about the city's collaborative houselessness office and the House bill. We talked about all these things. So I'm just thinking brand. Let's work on that, because then all of a sudden there's a buzzword, a focus, and an excitement that can ring. So we can do that in the future. But it's like, what's the name? What are we even doing here? The specific branding name. And then also an ask, remember, and Representative, thank you so much for joining us, but campgrounds is the thing that we haven't let ourselves build since 1973. Only existing land use outside the cities and the process of urban growth boundary expansions. And if we had some campgrounds, and I'm talking privately owned, commercial opportunities, we'd have a little bit more flexibility. It's not optimal, but we've got people living in RVs in different situations. And man, if we had some more campground spots, we just have that, kind of buffer in our system. So we can do something with that. Thank you.
Can I give one comment and maybe we can just go around and everyone can close?
That's what I.
To jump off what Commissioner DeBone just said, I heard the sheriff say, oh, we have so many services, so many providers. I want to say our providers are stretched. They are stretched thin. They have workers who are burning out. Any part of the strategic plan that we move forward has to include a plan to build capacity. Because I totally agree with these new ideas for different types of shelter space, including campgrounds. Who is going to run it? And it's not necessarily that we might be able to find the funding through this office. We need the people and the workers and the nonprofits, and they need our help and our investment because they've been underinvested in over the past decade. So I just want to make that point. We have wonderful, wonderful people working as hard as they can. We don't have enough, and they don't have enough support and resources. So that has to be, I think, part of our strategic plan going forward is building that capacity so that when we have a new idea or a new initiative, we have someone that's able to step up and say, yep, I'm ready to run it. Right, and we are lacking that right now. So that's all I'll say.
But I am proud that Janice has 3 positions that were filled in February. So Janice, congratulations on that. Yes, great job.
Councilor Schenkelberg.
Thank you, everyone, for coming together today to have this really important conversation. Just to kind of add on to a lot of the conversations around people who are experiencing houselessness. We often come to these very flat ideas around it's just mental health, it's just addiction, and the reality is the system that we live in right now has created this problem. The way that housing looks, the way our economy looks, the way we respect human beings. And so I feel excited to have this office moving forward, and I'd really like to continue to press the importance of looking at individuals and not grouping them into these populations of where they are less than the people that sit in this room.
Rita said it well. Nothing to add to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to see this concept taking shape. Appreciate everybody leaning in. I go back to sitting with Rep. Krupp and Chief Krantz and Councilor Perkins, and Commissioner DeBone brought his folding chair to a park And it was the first time I think we sprung this on you, and it's been a short, but I think a really fruitful journey over the last several months, and appreciate everybody working on this, and especially Rep. Krupp. Thanks.
Three quick things, I guess. One, I really want to thank the county and city staff for putting together this IGA and this presentation today. It's a lot of hard work, and we appreciate you. Well, I guess I'll just go to the last thing. You know, I think one of the things that I keep hearing over and over again today is we. And I think the hardest part of this joint office, this collaborative office, is going to be we are all going to have to trust in the expertise of this position, of this executive director, that they have the values and the know-how to really move this along for our community, and we are all going to have to take a step back a little bit and let this process run. And I think that'll be hard for all of us, but I think that when we hire the right person for this position, I think we'll see this role flourish and you know, and a really clear path forward for our community. So I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to see what comes up.
Thank you.
So I would just like to express continued excitement and enthusiasm for the opportunity presented by this coordinated response office. Two themes that we have heard come up throughout the day today are the need, let me just start by saying no one wants unauthorized, unmanaged camping in our community. Neighborhoods don't want it. People who are concerned about fires don't want it. Businesses don't want it. Service providers would much rather provide services in places where they know people are going to be and where they are supported. The people who live in unauthorized, unmanaged locations, I think if you asked the majority of them, they would say they don't want it either. But we need alternatives. We need alternatives, and we need the resources and services to make those alternatives work. And to touch on the theme that the sheriff brought up, I would use a different word. I would say we need to set expectations. So people need alternatives and all the support possible to take those alternative pathways, but they also need to have expectations. And you know, you could call that enforcement or consequences or something else, but expectations are important. But we can't do expectations without alternatives and support. So the reason I'm so excited about this office is that we have very many different ideas about what those alternatives look like around this table. And this joint office, this coordinated office, whatever you want to call it, is an opportunity for us to sort that out and to get on the same page. In some ways, I feel like it's not this simple, but sometimes I feel like it's as simple as some people feel like they want to lean in, and some people feel like they want to hold it at arm's length in the way that we provide those alternatives. But this office is an opportunity for us to hash that out and come up with a unified approach for our community. And I think that's a very exciting thing.
Barb, do you want to have the last remarks?
I'm ready to lean in.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yay.